Hello, welcome to PCAP's Native Prairie Speaker Series. My name is Caitlin Morose-Seiler, and I am the Stewardship Coordinator with Saskatchewan Prairie Conservation Action Plan, or PCAP. Today, Tamara Carter and Matthew Braun will be providing us with an introduction to the Weston Family Prairie Grassland Initiative. I'd like to start by stating we respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations and communities, past and present. For millennia, they have worked to protect these landscapes and the life these areas sustain. I would like to thank these original caretakers and acknowledge the ongoing work and presence of Indigenous peoples in Canada today. Before we get started, I'd like to note that PCAP's Native Prairie Speaker Series is a monthly presentation about anything to do with Native Prairie conservation or species at risk. And on November 30th, Dinyar Manucher from the Canadian Prairies Prescribed Fire Exchange will be speaking about prescribed fire and grasslands. You can register for this webinar on the PCAP website, and all past webinar presentations can be found on the PCAP YouTube channel, and this webinar will be uploaded there in the near future as well. I'd like to note that financial support for today's webinar is provided by our presenting sponsors, Eco-Friendly Sask, Saskatchewan Cattlemen's Association, Sask Energy, and Wildlife Habitat Canada. Our supporting sponsors are Camp Wolf Willow, as well as Environment and Climate Change Canada. In-kind support for this webinar has been provided by our partner, the Nature Conservancy of Canada. A reminder to all of our listeners out there, if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type into the question section of the webinar dashboard anytime. And if you're on a cell phone, you can send your question by chat to the organizer, and questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. So a bit about today's presenters. Matthew Braun is the Manager of Conservation Science and Planning for the Nature Conservancy of Canada's Saskatchewan region and works from his home in Osler, Saskatchewan, where he also lives with his wife and 2 kids. Despite his education in agriculture and the U.S., from the University of Saskatchewan, his experience as a professional agrologist monitoring livestock grazing on the rangelands of British Columbia and Saskatchewan, and his childhood of hilling enough potatoes to feed a small village. He enjoys gardening, reading science fiction, and a smattering of trombone music. His position at NCC sees him facilitating coarse-scale planning to guide NCC's Saskatchewan region's work in the province, liaising with researchers, tackling ecological questions, and working with livestock producer groups. Tamara Carter, her husband Russ, and their 3 children run a mixed farming operation along the South Saskatchewan River near Lasadania, Saskatchewan. They crop just under 6,000 acres and run 250 head of commercial Black Angus cattle on 7,000 acres of native prairie grasslands. A former Calgary resident and University of Calgary alumni, Tamara was transplanted by marriage to Saskatchewan. She embraced rural life and the challenges of both farming and ranching with enthusiasm and has become part of an operation that spanned 3 generations. After 20 years of constant learning with the agriculture industry, her perspective continues to grow to be one of curiosity and excitement. Her interest in forages, research, and extension led her to the Saskatchewan Forage Council, which she chaired for 3 terms. She also sits on the Strategic Advisory Board of the Livestock and Forage Centre of Excellence in Clavitt, Saskatchewan. She recently accepted the position of Director, Prairie Grassland Conservation with Nature Conservancy of Canada to design and administer a new stewardship investment program aimed at preserving grasslands and the tremendous biodiversity they support. An avid horticulturalist and master gardener, Tamara can often be found outside working cattle, planting trees, or pulling weeds in her gardens. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to Tamara first.
Thank you, Caitlin. Okay, just let me know if you are able to see my screen.
Yes, everything is good to go.
Perfect, awesome. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today to present a brief overview of the Weston Family Grassland Initiative. And thanks to the funders who make this series possible. Thanks for participants who are joining us on your lunch hour. At NCC, we're quite excited to be building and implementing this new collaborative program that will further support biodiversity on grasslands through several different projects. And today we're going to provide a brief update on the first year of programming, highlight some of the challenges and learnings, and outline the next steps. I think I'll maybe, to keep my bandwidth here, I'll maybe just go off camera. So last year, you may have heard the announcement about the significant funding commitment that was made by the Weston Family Foundation. Nearly $25 million has been generously committed by the Weston Family Foundation to 5 organizations to accelerate the implementation of sustainable practices and achieve landscape level impact. The 5 organizations are Nature Conservancy of Canada, Ducks Unlimited Canada, Saskatchewan Stock Growers Foundation, Grasslands National Park, and Meewasin Valley Authority. Each of these organizations brings additional funding and in-kind donations for a total of $70 million going towards this initiative. And each of these organizations is administering various stewardship, conservation, and securement activities. What are the goals of the Weston Family Prairie Grasslands Initiative? Simply to increase the amount of land protection in the prairies, improve species at risk habitat, enable wildlife movement, and ultimately to increase long-term ecological and economic stability. And dozens of partners will support this work, impacting nearly 4 million acres of priority native grasslands in one of the largest conservation efforts in Canadian history. And it's quite cool because it is a cross-provincial initiative. This commitment from the foundation is very much a catalyst, and it's providing the impetus to create partnerships, tools, and models that will directly impact grassland conservation. The initiative is a multi-year collaboration to celebrate, steward, and protect one of Canada's most ecologically valuable and threatened ecosystems. It involves many partners, stakeholders, and collaborators. And of the $25 million that the foundation has pledged, almost $15 million will be allocated to NCC and our 4 delivery partners. So we work closely with Ducks Unlimited Canada, Manitoba Habitat Heritage Corporation, Southern Alberta Land Trust Society, and Western Sky Land Trust. Now, as the Director of Prairie Grassland Conservation at NCC, my role is to design and implement the program that NCC will administer together with our partners. This unique program will help to support ranchers implementing best management practices that improve biodiversity across our prairie grasslands. This is a visual representation of the funding, how it's flowing, because it is a little bit confusing. The 5 at the top here are the organizations: Stock Growers Foundation, Grasslands National Park, Ducks Unlimited, Meewasin Valley Authority, and then of course NCC. Now I don't have the details of the other funding recipients programs included on this chart, but you can see that NCC is delivering 3 separate programs under this initiative. So restoration of native grasslands, carbon sequestration, and stewardship investment. And we will be working with our delivery partners to administer the stewardship investment program. And that's what we're going to focus on mostly in today's presentation. Now, let's just flash back. Why are temperate grasslands important? Well, they're the most altered and least protected terrestrial ecosystem on Earth. As much as we hear about rainforests and all coral reefs, grasslands are so important and underappreciated and underacknowledged. They are the habitat for wildlife, birds, pollinators, predators, prey. Home to, oh, that's supposed to say rare, nice typo there, rare and endangered plant and animal species. Grasslands sequester carbon, stabilize soil, mitigate climate change, and improve the quality of water, air, and soil. Unfortunately, less than 35 million acres remain in Canada, and they are on the decline. Between urban sprawl and conversion to cropland, we're seeing grassland acres lost every year. And in fact, from 1990 to 2015 alone, we lost over 3.3 million acres in Saskatchewan. Canadian ranchers are the stewards of these declining ecosystems, and they face increased economic challenges in protecting and preserving these grasslands. And I expect we probably had further conversion to cropland last fall and this spring. You know, we're seeing $25 canola, $30 lentils, durum at $25. So high grain prices quite often will result in further conversion of land to cropland. And in fact, this spring I was in Calgary in April, and I was driving back along Highway 72 through Bicycle, and I could not believe the amount of land that I could see just from that highway that was inside fenced out pastures that appear to have been just really recently converted, terminated, and tilled to crops. And I expect that as the drought continued through the summer here, and ranchers were facing some really tough decisions about, dispersing cattle as they watch their pasture health decline and their feed resources dwindle. So during these extremely challenging periods, ranchers might inadvertently put extra grazing pressure on their native ranges as well. Now, there are 3 components to the Grasslands Initiative stream that NCC is leading, as I mentioned, the Stewardship Investment Program, the Carbon Sequestration Program, and the restoration of native grasslands. So we are going to focus on the Stewardship Investment Program. It receives the largest portion of the funding to directly assist ranchers as they implement best management practices that will improve biodiversity. And what are the goals of the investment program? Well, we want to improve biodiversity outcomes through implementation of specific stewardship actions. And we want to be able to, over the next 4 years, support up to 800 individual projects, and they're up to $10,000 each. Monitor and report on the improvements due to the stewardship actions, help to educate program participants and their communities about the measurable biodiversity results from these funded activities, and we hope to complete new easements on over 50,000 acres of priority prairie habitat. And we're doing this in collaboration with our 4 delivery partners, prioritizing high-value grasslands with conservation easements that will benefit from these stewardship actions. NCC is also able to administer grants to renters of our fee simple lands and some eligible patron groups and community pastures. What are the criteria for project eligibility to be able to apply for these grants? We are looking at properties, grassland properties that are over 100 acres, primarily with conservation easements, and within 14 ecoregions, the high priority grassland areas. And as mentioned, there's one project per landowner up to 800 projects. This is a visualization, a map here of the 14 ecoregions where we can submit applications for these grants. Now, the program has 9 separate categories, and then nested under those categories, there are 36 separate action items that can be implemented. So, we're looking at improving range utilization, improving native range, improving wildlife habitat, improving water management, supporting species at risk, managing weeds and invasives on the native ranges, reducing fencing impact on wildlife, and educating grassland stewards, as well as reducing predator conflict. So, as you might imagine, this year, we saw quite a number of applications for projects under water management. So we saw things like installation of shallow pipelines, expanding dugouts, installing remote water systems, and drilling new wells. And we also saw applications for portable electric fencing units to really quickly be able to implement grazing management and range utilization changes. And I don't know if you've seen those range ward power grazers. They're quite slick little units where everything, the panels and the batteries and the wire and the stepping posts are all self-contained on one unit. So we had good uptake with those. So this is just a few photos of the 36 actions. I'm not going to list them all. If you're interested and you'd like to find out some more about the program and the separate 36 actions, you can certainly email me and I can give you a little bit more information. But they include things like prescribed fire, range health assessments, the installation of remote water systems, drilling wells. That's a picture of the razor grazer. And Southern Alberta Land Trust Society did this really cool little fence marking stick. So they designed this and manufactured these. So you can see the top fence has a 42-inch measurement, so elk can clear it, and then down at the bottom 18 inches for pronghorn to be able to scoot under. So that was kind of a neat thing. And we do have the ability under this program, if there are some really neat ideas that you can demonstrate that we can still improve biodiversity, we're able to examine those and consider those for implementation. I am now going to switch it over to Matthew, and he'll take the helm here.
Excellent. I'm going to show my screen. Make sure I show them the right screen. There we go. Okay. Hello. Thanks, Tamara. Good to see everybody, or good to be seen by everybody, I guess. And thanks for being here. I wanted to follow up on what Tamara was talking to us about, the actions there and why we chose those specific actions, because there's of course increasing pressure on agencies like ourselves to provide tangible results and to be able to use the limited resources that we have as effectively as possible. We really want to target where we're doing our work and what we're doing to try and get the best bang for our buck. So those 36 different actions that we've proposed for this incentive program are really designed to really focus in on the highest priority activities to really get the biggest bang for the buck. And the way we did that was we started off by looking at all of the different management plans that NCC has for the prairie provinces, and we looked at all 27 of those different plans and took all the prioritized activities that were generated through the development of those management plans and used those kind of as our basis for what we'd be looking at in this program. The way we developed those plans was a pretty rigorous process that we've adopted at NCC over the last couple of years, called the conservation standards. And what we do is we look at individual areas, we look back at that map, and we kind of draw a polygon around an area that we think is similar, has similar values and similar threats to those values, similar biodiversity values and threats, and we take the time to review those values, find out where they are, where they're found, what's the best method of conserving those values, and then what are the stressors on those values. So we look at the threats to those values and try to come up with a conceptualization of what's happening, what's driving the different activities on the land. And then we really dig into the science of each of those aspects to understand as best we can what's motivating people to respond the way they do on the landscape, and then where are the best places for groups like NCC and the other Ducks Unlimited and other NGOs that we work with to intercede and to provide some influences on the outcomes of those biodiversity values. And then we do our best to visualize that. We take these sticky notes, we put them up on the walls and really and have conversations about where everything goes and what really is motivating the different things that are leading to the decline of grassland songbirds or something like that. And we spell all that information out there, and then we do a vetting process where we provide that information to as many different stakeholders and scientists as we can to get a good review, check for assumptions, make sure we're not missing anything. And that really drives that development of those activities and generates that high level list of prioritized activities that are going to hopefully address the stressors and the threats to the biodiversity that's out there. And that process is an internationally recognized process called conservation standards, and it's got a whole cycle involved with it. And I think maybe some of you have been involved in a few of those workshops where we've asked your opinion on what's going on and how best to monitor for changes, and then later on you hear follow-ups on how did we do and what did we actually meet the goals that we're looking for. The whole purpose is to be able to have those measurable effects on biodiversity, and at the same time to be able to balance the needs of society, the economy, and the environment as well. Because what we're really looking to be part of that working landscape, to use the best available science to measure outcomes and to make our recommendations and guidances based on what the research is showing is going to be effective. And at the same time balancing the needs of the people that are living there and implementing those activities as well. So that's really what the goal was. And so we took those activities and we looked at the science behind them. And I just wanted to run through a couple of examples of some of the actions that, some of those 36 actions that Tamara was talking about there, to give you a sense of some of the work that was done behind that. So looking at just one slide behind, I think. There we go. We're looking at one of the more interesting, maybe controversial ideas of reintroducing beavers as part of an attempt to improve riparian function. I know that's they're not always a popular species out there, but we do know from the research that's been done that beaver ponds are effective ways of removing sediment from water, soaking up some of the excess nutrients that might be happening and being inputted into the environment, improving water quality downstream. And they've also been used as ways to address stream incisions, those V's that we see out there when stream banks are being eroded. And they're effective at increasing species biodiversity, as well as at the same time improving some of the habitats that are out there. So it's a bit of a out there one, but it's the science behind it is pretty solid, and it's one of the options for our program here. A little bit more solid ground in terms of working with wildlife. We've also done some work looking at reviewing the science on predator conflict with livestock producers, and the research is clear that a lot of the conflict that results in the death of things like bears, black bears, grizzly bears, results from attractants. So bears are attracted closer to livestock operations because producers may not be able to dispose of dead animals, or keeping bears away from honey production, or easy access to grain out there. And so one of the suggestions from the research is to really focus in on removing those attractants, making them less accessible, and doing close and local monitoring to kind of respond to changes in the wildlife responses there. A much cuter example of science and vegetation management is looking at the goats, or the small ruminant grazing. We have some good examples in the literature showing that a combination of goats and biocontrol and herbicides can be very effective at removing leafy spurge from the landscape. And it does make sense, because you're looking at an ecosystem that's been grazed by the same type of livestock again and again, and adding that different type of livestock to the mix that focuses on forbs instead of just grass can really can change how the vegetation on the landscape is responding. And so yeah, we're looking at that and supporting that because the science makes sense, that we understand how the ecosystem functions and what we can do to kind of respond to it and provide that alternative vegetation management solutions. Tamara mentioned this, and it's been a serious consideration and serious challenge for land managers this year, is the lack of water. We've time and time, the research has shown again and again that providing off-stream and off-site watering is an effective way of giving livestock good, clean water, which is great for productivity, for livestock productivity, but it also keeps livestock away from trampling wetlands and streams, and maintains that habitat, maintains that water quality, which is important for downstream wildlife, and really it keeps the ecosystem looking better. I'm going to turn it back to Tamara now.
Okay, am I good to go here?
Yes, everything looks good.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Matthew. So when we look at the impact of implementing best management practices to improve biodiversity outcomes on native ranges, the results can often take years to deliver maximum impact. And when we try to design research projects and methodologies, we're up against short funding cycles, that are challenging when we're dealing with slow and incremental changes that occur within grassland ecosystems. Now, well, we can clearly see how a new water system, for example, could improve range utilization, and as mentioned, cattle health, reduce trampling on riparian areas. Sometimes it's harder to measure those. So some examples of the 36 actions will have much faster demonstrated biodiversity outcomes and improvements, and some of the results will take much longer to truly capture the benefits on the ecosystem. So some successes, challenges, and learnings from our first year of this program. Obviously, building a new program and working with multiple stakeholders and partners is a powerful catalyst for collaboration, innovation, and change. You get all those people around the table or virtually putting their noodles together and coming up with different ideas from different geographic areas and their different skill sets and experience is excellent. It also requires commitment and clear communication among all parties, and it takes time to build trust and relationships. Having the right people involved makes a huge impact. And this project demonstrates the spirit of collaboration across 3 NCC regions, so Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, as well as among the numerous partners. And I'm really enjoying working with such a diverse group, seeing the passion of all of our partners and what they bring to the table. And, we had really good interest and uptake from ranchers with over 100 applications this first year. And we potentially are impacting up to 80,000 acres of grasslands through this. Now, the weather, particularly the drought across the prairies, was a significant challenge with the Stewardship Investment Program. And unfortunately, we had a number of ranchers who were very interested and excited, and some had even applied and started the process, but they were forced to withdraw their applications because a number of factors. Either they could not, there was, supply issues, and they were unable to get certain components like water pumps and such for their remote systems, to the actual time and mental bandwidth to participate in the program. So, when you're dealing with crisis management, trying to figure out where you're going to move your yearlings because they have no water, and your dugout dried up suddenly, accessing $10,000 of a program may not be top of mind and the highest priority. So that was disappointing because some of those ranchers were the ones we wanted to help the most, and for one reason or another, they had to withdraw from the program. So we will continue to make the program flexible and adaptive for ranchers and to simplify the intake processes even more. And we'll be taking applications as early as January for 2022. So the next steps, the program does continue until the end of 2024. And we are currently working with our delivery partners to make minor adjustments to the program to simplify the application process, provide more flexibility in the grant administration. And as I mentioned, we'll take applications early in the new year. So if you've got some projects in mind and you meet some of these eligibility criteria, do a little bit of brainstorming here over the next 6-8 weeks. So how do you apply for the Stewardship Investment Program? Well, if you do fit some of those eligibility criteria, either with NCC or our partners, so if you have a conservation easement, of 100 acres with Ducks Unlimited, and you've got native grasslands there, you've got some ideas, you need to expand a dugout, certainly reach out to your staff, your local field staff, and ask them for a little bit more information about the program. And you can reach out to me as well. I can put my email back up at the end there and track me down. Now, who is impacted by this initiative? As a rancher, I was really intrigued when I first heard about this initiative, and I was really interested in this role at NCC. I hadn't actually been really involved in conservation from an NGO standpoint, though obviously as a rancher, we understand the importance of being a good steward and a good grass farmer and managing our soil, our water, our resources. So this program will help ranchers as well as their families and their local communities. Any improvements to biodiversity and avoiding further conversion of grasslands helps to provide ecosystem services to the broader society as well. And I was intrigued to see how many people over the last 20 months spent a lot more time outdoors in nature, and some friends and family, more urban people that said, wow, I really needed that for mental health. And I think as we get a little bit more awareness of the importance of grasslands and the benefits that they can provide to the greater society, that helps too. I feel quite blessed and fortunate to be able to do what I do, and to be able to have that ability to be out in nature and work with livestock and see wildlife, pour a coffee and look out the kitchen window and see a deer scooting across the lawn. Not everybody has that opportunity, and it's helpful if we can keep improving biodiversity outcomes, reduce the further conversion of grasslands, so we have these amazing ecosystems. And they are a vital part of a wildlife, grassland bird habitat, wild bee populations and pollinators, and they provide carbon sequestration, air and water filtration. So keeping cattle on these working landscapes and keeping them healthy, it also contributes to food sovereignty. Really healthy grasslands and healthy ecosystems help to create healthy cows and healthy people. So I'm really excited to be part of this initiative and to be working with such great people. Here is a slide for those of you that love to check out references and verify Matthew's work. You can certainly check this out. And with that, I will wrap up. And Caitlin, I haven't been monitoring the chat box, but if there's questions or however you would like to manage this, that would be great.
Well, first off, I just want to thank both of you for the awesome presentation. I definitely took a few notes, and I wasn't familiar with the amount of work that you had going on there. So thank you both for sharing that information with us today. To our attendees, we have, I think, over 120 attendees right now. So if you have any questions, feel free to type it into the question section of the webinar dashboard, or if you're on a cell phone, just send it by chat to the organizers. Yeah, we don't have any questions at the moment, but while we give people a minute to type on, sometimes it takes a few seconds to send a question in. Could you tell us maybe a little bit about kind of how long you've been with NCC and the type of work that you do there when you're not doing the Weston Family Foundation? Matthew, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I've been working with NCC since 2014.
Wow.
And I started off as a kind of doing science and planning, as well as managing some of the properties in north of Saskatoon, in and around Saskatoon, north of Saskatoon, and moved into just doing planning and science a year or two after that, and recently started taking. So that's been working at trying to do some of the guidance and some of the broad scale planning, where we look at our biodiversity goals and the threats to those biodiversity goals in the specific parts of the province, and working on the plans that develop the actions and strategies for those areas. And recently, within the last 2 or 3 years, started working with our pasture program, which has been really interesting to work with the different patron groups in different parts of the province. Have had the pleasure of meeting a lot of different grazing corporation boards and their pasture managers, which has been really great, really interesting way to learn about land management in the province. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Tamara?
Well, I'm still pretty new to NCC. I've only been here since March 1st, so and I really enjoyed getting to know so many of the different staff, the delivery partners, and I have to say, I joke in the livestock industry about all the acronyms we have, but holy goodness, they're nothing compared to the conservation world. I still need a cheat sheet, 4 pages long. So
yeah,
but it's an exciting program.
Awesome, that's great. So we've had a number of questions come in right now. One listener's wondering if you could put the slide back up that shows the flow diagram for the Weston Family Initiative, the 5 organizations under it, and then the 3 goals that NCC is overseeing. I think that was on your screen, Tamara. Probably right at the beginning. And I just want to make a note to our listeners or attendees today. If you minimize your screen, there'll be an option to do a screenshot, and I actually screenshotted this exact one. So then you can make a quick note, and this presentation is also being recorded too. So if you do want to watch the recording, it'll be available on the PCAP YouTube channel in the near future. So a person can zip back there and take a look again. But it's quite interesting. I didn't realize how many different organizations were involved with this initiative. So that's great.
Okay. I've got the slide. So what do I need to do from a settings standpoint?
I think that's it. I think they just wanted to see it again. So a listener named Jesse is wondering if there is a conservation easement, if it's a requirement of tapping into this funding, or can the goal of obtaining a conservation easement allow a participant to access the funding?
At the moment, you have to have one in place.
Okay.
But this is certainly a good opportunity if you've been thinking about one for a while, pulling the trigger and getting the paperwork done up on that, because we do have, as I said, 4 more years of funding to access.
Awesome. That's great. Good to know. Thank you. We have a couple listeners that are wondering about what parts of the province that you're working on. And if, yeah, could you give a bit more information about your target areas?
I can certainly jump to the this map again with the ecoregions, and it shows, you know, all 3 provinces. And so any of the areas here that have the grasslands that would meet those criteria of the 100-acre easement in these areas would be able to apply. Now, this year we were somewhat strategic and targeted because the program, you know, I just came on in March and had to quickly try to design and build the program and connect with all our partners and get it rolled out the door. It could be that we have, you know, such good uptake that we have to really rank and prioritize projects. So in that case, the information that Matthew explained, that is how our conservation team and our staff would rank and prioritize the projects.
Awesome. Thank you. Kelsey is wondering if there is a link to more information on the 36 stewardship actions and where eligible producers can apply.
We do not yet have a separate URL or website for this. So at the moment, as we're getting this up and running, I am still the point of contact. So if you would like to email me, I can send you a list of all 36 actions.
Awesome. Thank you. Peter is wondering, he says, I joined late and may have missed this. Some of the BMPs appear to overlap the federal, provincial, ag environmental programs. Are you partnering with provinces to avoid redundancies? And what about next generation programs? So it's 2 questions in there, I guess.
Right from the onset, I did connect with ministry personnel here in Saskatchewan, not as much in Alberta and Manitoba. We do want to be mindful of, you know, not sort of doubling up on certain BMPs, but obviously the fact that we have similar ones is addressing the fact that there is need there. And we're working collaboratively to be able to administer these programs. And what was the second part?
What about next generation programs? So once your funding's finished here, is there any plan for the future?
Well, I think there is always that hope that we'll be able to attract other funders, that we would be able to complete this particular project, and then hopefully out of the momentum that we get and the improvements to biodiversity outcomes, then be able to demonstrate that perhaps with some federal funding or as I say, any other funders, that we would be able to complete this and then build upon our results to do similar and further projects.
Thanks for that answer. Claudia is wondering, she's just curious as to why there's a 100-acre minimum in view of how many smaller areas of grasslands are under threat of conversion in Alberta.
I was not part of building the original proposal. Matthew, I don't know if you had more information that you could provide on that, but I think, go ahead.
I think from the NCC standpoint, we tend to operate at I kind of have a minimum threshold that we work with, because again, that bang for your buck, where it's this relatively the same amount of effort to work with 160 acres or 100 acres as it is to work with a 10 or 20 acre patch, and we're really trying to focus and prioritize as trying to achieve as much as we can with the resources that we have. I think that's I don't know the specifics behind 100 acres, but I think that's the general idea there.
That makes sense. Thank you for that answer. Robert is wondering, how do you square grass-fed cattle and methane production for carbon sequestration? Do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, I think that it's important Tamara, do you mind if I take a stab at that one? I think it's important to remember that the benefits of having a viable livestock industry is in keeping that native grassland in grass, where it's storing considerable amounts of carbon, and definitely there's still some room for improvements on the methane production from livestock. It's not to be ignored, but the focus on our work is to keep that grassland in grass, so that it's keeping the carbon there. So not wanting to ignore the methane end of things, but we do have to focus on keeping the carbon in the ground.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you, Matthew. Kelsey's wondering if there are any existing beaver reintroduction or beaver dam projects in place, and if so, how do you deal with the permitting issue, as both are not currently permitted in Alberta? Maybe this is different for Saskatchewan or Manitoba.
Great question.
We actually didn't have, yeah, I was just going to say, Matthew, we didn't have any uptake on that particular action this year, but if you have more information, Matthew, that you could provide, that would be great.
No, of course, we do obviously have to work within the specific rules of the different jurisdictions that we're operating in, and we will be complying with those rules as well. Yeah, but that's a good heads up. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Have you had any? So you haven't done any beaver reintroductions yet? Is that correct? Okay. It's interesting. PCAP had a webinar probably about a year ago by Rob Gardner. I believe he's from Medicine Hat, and he did a presentation about beavers and drought proofing. It was very interesting. So if anyone's interested in that, that's definitely on the PCAP YouTube channel, so you can check it out for more information too. A listener named Diane is wondering if you can describe a few projects that have showed improvements and what those improvements are.
Sure. I mean, as I mentioned, that some are going to be obviously harder to measure within one season, but I think because the drought showed immediate improvements. You know, if you have a dried up dugout and suddenly you're able, and you know, you can't utilize that entire area because your animals need to have daily water when it's 38 degrees. Being able to drill a new well and then put a remote water system on that is an immediate impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And the razor grazer too is fantastic. You know, to be able to utilize temporary electric fencing to cross fence off a larger pasture and to have your animals rotate through in more of a mob grazing method. Again, really fast results, and particularly noticeable because of the drought. You know, when it rains, everybody can look good and you can look like a genius and your grass looks great everywhere. But when you have drought, you have to be even more prepared and pay more attention.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer. Great. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have right now. So, yeah, I guess we'll call it a day here. So, Matthew and Tamara, I just wanted to thank you again so much for the awesome presentation. It was really, really informative. Thank you.
Thanks for all the work that you do. These webinars have been really great in the last couple of years here. Just great way to connect with people and find out what's going on. So thank you guys for putting these on.
That's fantastic. That's great to hear. Thank you. We actually have one more question that's just popped in. Listener named Ferguson is wondering if SSG, ducks, and NC will all be delivering with the same best management practices.
Again, because of the way that funding chart rolls out, I'm not intimately familiar with what Stock Growers is doing. They're implementing their own programming. The BMPs that ducks as part of our stewardship investment program obviously are completely aligned, and I would assume that very similar in their other separate funding stream.
Thanks for that answer. We've had a number of people type in that thank you so much for the awesome presentation. There's a few people that might want to touch base with you. Would it be possible for you to type your email address maybe into the chat section, and you can send it to everyone? And then if anyone has any further questions, they can reach out to you directly if that's okay. Perfect. To our attendees out there, thank you so much for joining our webinar today. When you leave our webinar, you will receive a quick 1-minute survey. So if you don't mind filling that out, we really appreciate it because we use that information to report back to our funders and to look for new funders to keep our Native Prairie Speaker Series going for another fiscal year. If you missed anything on today's webinar, you're welcome to check out PCAP's YouTube channel. We have some really awesome webinars there as well too. It's easy to get distracted, especially as people are getting on the field now if you're looking for something to watch. But this one will be uploaded there in the near future too. And be sure to check out PCAP's website. We have a Native Prairie Speaker Series section, and that's where we update all of our upcoming webinars. And I'm working hard to line up some interesting presentations for the next few months. So yeah, with that, thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.